sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. We will not comply with the institutions. Sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution.
The only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
This is Tony Lyons. I am president of MAHA Action, and I'm so sorry to have to say that, you know, how sad we all are that Charlie Kirk has been shot. I know all of our thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family, and we recognize, you know, what kind of a battle we're in at this time. And we don't know the details of who shot him and why it happened, but it's clear that he's somebody who, you know, played a big role in Trump's success, in Secretary Kennedy's success, and he helped massively in getting the youth vote to turn out, and you know, just played such an important role. And President Trump has thanked him so many times for all of the work that he's done. So I'm just terribly sorry to report that. I guess probably most of you, maybe all of you, have heard that, but maybe we can just take a moment of silence and a prayer for him and his family, and then we'll move on. Okay, so, you know, the MAHA report came out yesterday, as you all know. To me, it was just an incredible success story, you know, showing how hard everybody has been working to see change in this country. And I think that Secretary Kennedy and his team, Calley, have gotten more done in 6 months than any other HHS has done in the history of the country. There's just a laundry list of successes, of major wins, of new programs coming from all different agencies, new directions, laws, executive orders, all kinds of things aimed at making this country more healthy. Nobody should disagree with that. People should all be on board with it. It's a shame that so many people aren't, and that it's political. But I think that the work that we're doing really is God's work, and that it's so important, and that it's impacting millions and millions of people's lives. So we should all be proud of that. We should all stay strong and keep fighting. And you know, one of the ways we can do that is through this Zoom call, is through amplifying what's really going on, fighting back. You know, the mainstream media just won't tell the truth, won't acknowledge any of the successes that we're having, but we need to just keep pushing. So I'm very happy to bring in Calley, who's played such a central role in the MAHA movement.
Thanks, Tony. Charlie was, I don't think the public fully understands how central he's been and how important he's been to this MAHA movement particularly. He was a warrior, you know, supporting Secretary Kennedy's message before the endorsement, reaching out to me, reaching out to so many others. And then with the actual endorsement was facilitated by Charlie. That endorsement in Phoenix was a turning point event. Charlie was integral and behind the scenes making that all happen with the, you know, the sparklers when he walked out. That was all handcrafted by Charlie. Turning point planned events with Secretary Kennedy throughout the country in the lead up to the campaign. Charlie was every day working on making this coalition successful in so many ways behind the scenes. and this is a really tough moment. I think, yeah, just to be philosophical, one second, it just, I think there is a feeling among Secretary Kennedy, not to speak for him, but in this administration, that we're at a really important turning point in America, a very destabilized time. And I do think, it's been a lot of the pressure and a lot of the emotions in this MAHA movement. I think we all feel like there's existential stakes. And I think there's sometimes frustration around how fast we're going to move. And I think this is an experiment to filter really, really important existential issues through the political system. This MAHA energy is much more than simple changes to Medicare, Medicaid policy. It's around, really unleashing spiritual and cultural conversations that go to the foundation of our country. And I think this messy political process, democracy is this new invention that, basically replaces what used to be just utter violence. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what we feel. We're trying to save the country here. And I think just getting into the more mundane day to day, I do think, this MAHA report and what's happening, and I hope everyone feels this, it is the greatest effort in the history of modern US government to filter radical ideas through our political system. And that does involve compromise. It does involve, talking to all sides. What's become clear to me in the process of this MAHA report is that, the ideas we're talking about do run up against other important forces. I mean, it runs up against the whole US economy. It runs it up against tens of millions of jobs. And, a lot of these people that are representing stakeholders on, an alternate side are not bad people. I mean, we're engaging a lot with farmers. Farmers are absolutely getting crushed. They're suffering. They're scared. And, I do think there's something very inspiring and very admirable about what Secretary Kennedy is doing, where he's gone from being an advocate into the seat of power, and is working to really balance very important forces. And this is my message. We're winning, and we just need to keep it up. It is extraordinary, as we've talked about, that Secretary Kennedy is the second most maligned person in the country after President Trump. And this message is resonating with the American people. And, the reporters are always trying to play gotcha on, the MAHA, going up against another interest group, or, dissension in the ranks, or we're not doing enough. But the most important thing I think we're doing is putting an energy out there that voters are clamoring for change. And what we're trying to do is show that we can get things done. I think this pharmaceutical ad memorandum last night was a great example of that. This is a bold action. When we say the U.S. is one of two countries in the world that doesn't ban pharma ads, that's actually not true. Many other countries actually technically enable pharma ads, but they require more disclosures. And the U.S. did not really have broadcast pharma ads until 1997, when they put a loophole in FDA regulations saying that basically they could cover up a lot of the safety information disclosures in a website link. And that led to the explosion of pharmaceutical ads. What this action does is actually take out that loophole to require much more safety information in ads. I mean, that's something people have been talking about for decades. That's a big win. We are fostering, where you had Secretary Kennedy sitting with Secretary Rowlands, sitting with Administrator Zeldin at the EPA, talking about having this messy, complex conversation about soil health, having this conversation about getting back to whole food. These ideas, I don't think it should be undercounted, are really being released into normal discussion. Obviously, a complex and messy conversation about the pharmaceutical industry, about vaccine injury. And I think, to me, that is the biggest win we could possibly have in the first year. We're changing the nature of political debate. We're changing the Overton window, with the full support of President Trump. So yes, we're very proud of these MAHA recommendations. I think looking at them, they really do signal a robust conversation about soil health. I think that the conversation that I really took away from the engagement on this is that farmers, in many cases do want to be part of the solution. I think we want radical change, but agriculture change is an incremental process, and there is going to be a working group to really work deeply with advocates in the regenerative space to figure out how to change incentives, to figure out technical assistance programs, to figure out various other funding sources to move this issue along, to work with farmers. It signals, very bold actions on food. I think a clear message from the administration is that we need to get better food on a child's plate. We need to untangle this addiction to ultra-processed food. We need to look at school lunches. We need to look at military food. We need to look at the nutrition guidelines. We need to look at where we're spending money like SNAP. That's a very bold set of policies. We need to look at the incentives of our medical system, restore gold standard science, even if it's messy, reform the CDC to actually have academic freedom and analyze data on vaccines, on pharmaceuticals, on our response procedures to pandemics. It talks about taking on corporate capture. I think these are all really important goals. And my ask, I think, everyone should be obviously advocating in their own way. And I think the emotion and difference of opinion in the MAHA movement is what makes this so strong. But there is strong signals in this report for every issue I think we care about. And I think we can use this as an opening to keep pushing for progress that this report symbolizes. And I think where we stand right now is on many issues, we are in a war right now, in a way, between this argument we're trying to make, which is obviously right, that we need deep reform to our system, and a expert class and media ecosystem that is hell-bent on saying that Secretary Kennedy is spouting dangerous misinformation. And so far we are winning. We are going to just keep trying to focus on a positive message, keep trying to drive reform, and the energy of what's happening in the country is what propels this all forward. This is politics. This is a constant adjudication between of public support of whether this agenda is resonating. And if we want to have change on the federal government level, we need to just keep talking to our friends, keep advocating on a local and state level, and keep showing support for this conversation that's being unleashed. So, Tony, happy to touch on any other items, but those are some reflections from the MAHA report.
So next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg, also really at the forefront of the MAHA movement, thinking about it every day and posting so many great posts on his platforms. So thank you, Eric, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Tony. Thanks for your support as well. I just want to share, I'm really looking closely at the MAHA media stats. I'm going to share some interesting things with you. I think you'll find this quite interesting. Over the past 30 days, something remarkable has happened with the MAHA and the media. It started out this reform idea that now is a massive movement that's shaking the very foundation of our broken healthcare system. And in fact, last month, we got 2.8 million engagements. Now, if we take a look at views or other statistics, engagements is the most important one, and 2.8 million engagements is massive, massive. And then also a reach of 66 billion impressions. Now, impressions aren't views, but they're attention units that are out there. And that is another massive biomarker of we're getting a lot of attention. So it's not even a trend, it's a tidal wave. Engagement with MAHA content in the last month has jumped up 35%. The number of unique voices are now an additional 125,000 authors. That's up 32%. So this is not just political chatter. It's doctors, parents, young professionals, even people around the world joining this conversation. So There are certain things that people are really interested in. They're very interested in supporting the phasing out of toxic chemicals out of our food supply. They're also very interested in addressing autism as a true public health emergency. And I know the argument is with autism has been, well, it's always existed, so we're just finally diagnosing it, have better tools to diagnose it. Well, if that's true, then the nursing homes would have a significant population of elderly with autism, and we don't see that at all. So that is not the argument that holds out very well. People are also very interested in the reforming medical education to focus on nutrition and prevention. I don't know if you know this, but fewer than 1 in 5 medical schools met the minimum 25-hour recommendation, not a requirement. 25 hours for the entire training is put on nutrition and prevention. But instead, they focus on pharmacology and pathology. So diet is completely omitted. You'd probably be better off talking to your neighbor about diet because they just don't have the data. They just don't have the training in that. So this is why it's drug first, food last. Also, there's a lot of support on our side for removing entrenched bureaucrats at the HHS and the CDC who have failed the public. People don't want Band-Aids, they want root cause solutions. And in the last 30 days, some of the most engaged posts about MAHA came from critics. So when they talk about us, our message spreads even more. So what you really need to know is who's driving this negativity. The loudest few voices are not regular people. It's industry and lobbyists. You just need to know that. So when we're monitoring the media, the influence of pharmaceutical companies is dominating. It's like 95%, especially a very specific group or trade association called BIO, which is the Biotechnology Innovation Organization. It stands for. It's the largest biotech trade association. They represent big pharma and biotech companies. So they lobby in Washington. They shape laws. They do regulation. They're really pushing for patent protections. That's really a lion's share of voices that you're really hearing, but it's not real consumers. One of the biggest viral spikes we saw recently was a post calling out the DC lobby groups working overtime to slow MAHA. It shot up to the #1 in our results, tens of thousands of likes, shares, comments. So in other words, the louder the lobbyists, the more people pay attention, the more MAHA grows. So it's actually helping us get more attention. But today in America, we spend 18 cents of every single dollar goes to healthcare. Other countries spend like 11 cents. So this whole war that we're in is about protecting the status quo. So this is why MAHA exists, to flip the incentives from disease management and managing disease with drugs to real prevention. So in summary, we're moving the needle. Let's continue, and over to you, Tony.
Thanks so much, Eric. I guess next we're going to have Sayer G, who has also been really central to the MAHA movement, been a fighter for all kinds of important causes for more than 25 years. And thrilled to have you here, Sayer. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me, Tony. So today I have the great pleasure of introducing everyone to Leah Wilson, who's the co-founder of a nonprofit that we put together in 2019. A little context behind that. So we started to notice, especially here in Florida, that there was concerning legislation that would reproduce the California SB 277 removal of religious and medical exemptions. So that started here in Florida as well. And we started to realize that we needed to bring together all of these really voiceless parents who didn't have a way to really engage lawmakers. So we started a 501c4 that was able to provide a platform in order to give millions an opportunity to really make that impact. And so Leah has spent countless hours with her dedicated team to essentially help to facilitate major victories in health freedom, parental rights, religious freedom. In fact, this year to date, there are already 218 actions on our platform. Last year was 224. And last year we saw 51 legislative victories that our advocates collectively had a huge impact in. Over the course of the 6 years, we have seen 87 such victories. So, it's just been an incredible journey with her. And at present, I'd like to introduce her so she can share more about an action we have right now to support Bobby in this critical moment. And just to give you some context, he himself has referenced this quote, which is that, the largest standing armies in the world collectively are actually represented by the pharma and healthcare industry. In the US alone, we have 22 million workers that are paid by that industry. And globally, there's about 40 to 50 million active duty soldiers worldwide throughout the entire planet, 27 million. So that's essentially what we're up against. And the recent victories, the ad memo, for example, are so massive in terms of the existential threat that it represents not only to pharmaceutical interests, but of course the propaganda machine that we have all experienced firsthand is arguably far more lethal a vector than the actual particles that they're referencing and scaring people with. So essentially, what we're witnessing as grassroots organizers is just this incredible tidal wave of enthusiasm and action being taken by everyday citizens. And we just would love to share more about that. And in fact, the main thing Leah will be speaking on today is our new lawsuit against the CDC, which is all about defending these very, very basic rights that, as you can see, it's a nonpartisan issue. The majority of Americans believe that bodily sovereignty is a basis for all of their civil liberties, and that is an incredible win. So I'd love to introduce you to Leah.
Well, thank you so much, Sayer, and thank you, Tony. I couldn't agree more with your sentiment that this is God's work. When I'm walking into meetings lately, approaching certain issues, some that we haven't even talked about publicly, the word I keep getting from God is go defend my creation. And that's exactly what we're doing by standing up for the kids, is restoring what was already his and what is ours. And so it's a pleasure to be standing with so many leaders, and especially with MAHA Action, the amazing work that you're doing. So thank you so much, Sayer, for the introduction. And Stand for Health Freedom has empowered people to use their voice for a long time, but this specific action of suing the CDC is exciting because now we're harnessing the infrastructure, the size of our voting block that we are together with all of you, and with SHF, almost 1 million advocates, to call out the CDC vaccine schedule as illegal. That this agency action of putting together this 72 plus dose schedule is unconstitutional and violates administrative law. And so it's amazing that this specific strategy has the ability to correct the imbalance of power in American medicine and to undo childhood mandates across the US. And that's what we're super excited about. And we hope more than anything that this CDC lawsuit is a short-term play, that it doesn't take 5, 7, 10 years like a lot of lawsuits do, because with the current ACIP and Bobby's reform of the agency, this is ripe for review. And it is our job as the voting bloc, as the advocates, to challenge these things and to bring these monumental issues forward, to put them at the top of the deck, to put them at the top of the agenda, and to support Bobby in that way. So really what this lawsuit is the people versus the experts. An agency that has historically been captured by the industry versus the moms and even the doctors and the dads and the almost 1 million SHF advocates, to say, look, we have a one-size-fits-all schedule that has not been studied, because every 72 part of that 72 doses is universally recommended with very little to no exceptions, right? And so if we're saying that every single American child should get these same doses, yet we haven't studied the cumulative effect, then you are ignoring a huge factor, which makes it an arbitrary action. And the way that this one-size-fits-all medicine has restricted speech of doctors, and the way that it has undermined due process, is unconstitutional. So we are asking the court to take all of the Category A recommendations on the childhood schedule and mandate that ACIP moves them to category B, which means shared decision making. And the two facts that support that request for relief are, one, that the schedule has not been studied cumulatively, and two, the Institute of Medicine, which is a primary advisor to public health within the government, has asked that these studies be done, and the government has not done them. So those two factors combined make this an illegal schedule, that their actions to pile up these doses on this childhood schedule should not stand as it is. And the relief that we're requesting is simply common sense, to hold an agency accountable for considering all facts before they do something that would affect every single American child. And our co-plaintiffs, Dr. Stoller and Dr. Paul Thomas, are two doctors that have had their licenses removed for giving informed consent to their patients. And they're perfect examples of the shift that we are looking for to restore that doctor-patient relationship. Some people who are pro-freedom might be bothered by the legal term shared decision-making, because really it's only one person's decision, and that's the guardian, right? That's the parent's decision. However, it's a term of art that means that it's the parent's decision and they consult the doctor. You know, a doctor isn't supposed to just give you whatever countermeasure you want without there being an indication to give it to the patient. They need to order it. So this would be something where the doctor would be recommending it and the parent would be making the final decision, and that would restore informed consent. And Dr. Stoller has a powerful story because he started asking questions about the vaccine schedule and writing medical exemptions when Hep B was first added to the childhood schedule. And he couldn't find a reason to give this to his patients, so he went digging for information on how do I even give informed consent on Hep B for infants. And when he found that it was a very empty recommendation, it set him on a different trajectory for practicing medicine. And now he has the opportunity to challenge the entire infrastructure alongside all of us as grassroots advocates. And the beautiful thing about this lawsuit is that it's something that you all can participate in, to the extent that the more we talk about it, the more people will know that the vaccine schedule is untested and that the cumulative effects are unknown and that it's aggressive and illegal. And so if you all can talk about this lawsuit on your channels, on your social media, and share the word, what it'll already do more good than not since we filed it. And the other thing is we started an ACIP comment call to action so that you can ask ACIP to put these very matters on their agenda. So ACIP has called a meeting for September 18th, and this is not one of their normally scheduled meetings. And so right now there's a comment period where you can submit your public comment that will become part of public record. And if you say things such as, we want the committee to look at the cumulative effect of the schedule, we want the committee to look at the data of vaxxed versus unvaxxed, we want this to be shared decision making so that parents will have the power back. And we have all of this written on our website so that we collectively, we can make sure that these concerns are brought to the forefront for the new committee members, and that those new committee members in ACIP have the backing of the people to make big changes on behalf of the American children. And so we're just excited that we can deliver this news to all of you and let all of you participate in this historical moment of pushing for change that will really shift the power of the imbalance of power in American medicine. So thank you so much for inviting me on tonight, Tony and Kyle and Sayer. And I'm here. I'll stick around if there's any questions about the lawsuit. We would love to have your participation in sharing the word.
Thank you so much, Leah. We also have an action to support Bobby. And in the email that will follow this broadcast, there will be links so you can take action, contact your lawmaker, just put in your zip code, and you're able to directly affect their perception and their actions when it comes to supporting Bobby.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sayer, and thanks, Leah. And yeah, that's a big part of why we're meeting here. So we have 3,200 people signed on to this call. And so that represents hundreds of millions of followers. And so we have a lot of power there. And the point of this call is to have people amplify the messages that they hear here, and that, that they get the emails that are sent each time, and that they take those assets and republish them as widely as they possibly can. And, there are a lot of people on this call who probably haven't thought much on, certain categories. So maybe they don't really think about vaccines or pesticides, that they're more connected to food or drugs. But the questions are really all the same. They're about delivery mechanisms for toxins that then contribute to the toxic load that can push people over the edge. And so, we all need to kind of keep that in mind, that we all want the same things. We want radical transparency. We want gold standard science so that we can make good decisions for ourselves, for our families. That's what this is all about. That's what MAHA stands for. And so now I'd like to introduce Russell Brand, who I think will have some very eloquent things to say.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thanks everyone that's on this call. Because Charlie Kirk just got shot, and it's in that peculiar liminal space that follows news events of this nature, the time of rumor and speculation and consternation. There's a real sort of ungroundedness and instability, and I'm kind of very aware that we participate in these sort of semi-anonymized, loosely rhetorical, incendiary and inflated discourses where people make all kinds of outrageous claims, and sort of in an attempt to land points, we really escalate our vocabulary and our invective. And then once in a while something happens where somebody actually gets shot, and I can almost hear the ripostes and responses, like if you sort of say, oh God, how terrible that Charlie Kirk has been shot, that people will say, well, what about people that are getting murdered in Gaza every day? Or maybe they'll say, well, Charlie Kirk is a Republican sort of right-wing guy, and people should care more about gun controls. And isn't it sort of extraordinary and concerning that the technology that we have now means that we're all in this somewhat unrestricted, sort of never-ending stew of intercommunication. And I'm not advocating, obviously, for censorship. Far from it. I really, really believe in free speech. But what I feel like might be important in the sort of liminal aftermath of a public shooting is not to sort of try and place it in a league table of significance and importance, but actually to, in the context of our call now, to be reminded of what our shared goals are. And the reason that I find the MAHA movement encouraging, and in particular that the MAHA movement has been brought to political fruition under an anomalous leader like Trump, who's such an astonishing defier of categorization in many ways, is that all of us eat food, and all of us require medical attention, and all of us require regulatory bodies that are worthy of the name. All of us all support and champion leaders that are willing to front corporations that speak plainly, that can undertake Senate hearings and be robust and articulate and patient, and also perhaps to notice how quickly and easily, how sudden and rapid, how vertiginous and awful the sort of crimson suddenness of a bullet to the neck and the gushing of the blood, that these things can occur in any moment. Ask not for whom the bell tolls, as they say, as one of your great writers wrote. And what I feel like is, well, why am I engaged in? Why do I come on this call every week? I come on because I like Tony. I come on because I really believe in Bobby Kennedy. I come on because I think a different type of politics could be born of precisely the constituency and terrain that's represented here, people that might be surprised that they've found themselves loosely corralled into a group with J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, someone to whom the Kennedy name and his sort of robust American pastoral fitness is appealing. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's really clear that that we're in a really contentious time that could end up with more and more assassinations, more violence, more condemnation, more reasons to detest one another. Or there could be a kind of exhalation, which on a personal level I understand and appreciate and sometimes experience, like, oh, I can't keep fighting. I'm just going to let go and surrender. And that's an empowering and holy thing. An empowering and holy thing to let go and surrender and think, how can I serve Christ and be one with him in this? And how I think I can be one with Christ and him in this when it comes to the MAHA movement is I really believe that it's ridiculous that addiction is the undergirding modality when it comes to food and the contents of food. I really believe that's ridiculous. I really believe that it's ridiculous that there's a kind of toxicity to medicines. I was reading Gavin DeBecker's book I see on the shelf there behind Tony, Forbidden Facts. It's kind of galling how far we've come from the principles that might even undergird something as rational as vaccination. So how I feel that I can participate in this is by humbly participating in the things that I understand. I understand that regardless of your political affiliations, you want your children to eat well. I understand that regardless of your political affiliations, you don't want your people taking unnecessary, let alone harmful medicines. I understand it, regardless of your political affiliations, on some level you're aware you're going to die one day, and increasingly we must become responsible for and alert to the potential of our language to create a kind of gurgling, burbling, vitriolic liquid that we're all unconsciously living in, and once in a while boils over, inevitably one might argue, into violence and murder. So I hope that we can have a temperate that I can make a temperate contribution to this conversation by saying that the people that have evident expertise in a variety of areas can rely on me to amplify what they're saying, and the people that are bold, like Secretary Kennedy, can rely on me to sort of amplify his message whenever I can. You should all read that Gavin DeBecker book if you ain't yet. Thanks for having me on here today. Tony, take care.
Thanks so much, Russell. And to put it into context, so grateful for Russell posting things. I was just shown a printout of the people with the most followers on social media, and Russell Brand is the number 2 person in the country with, I think, 22 million followers on various platforms. So it's really been a pleasure having you on these shows, but also it's just great, and we're very grateful that you've been amplifying Bobby Kennedy's messages and the message of the MAHA movement. Next up, we have Jay Carson and Mike Piscitelli, and to put them into context, they are filmmakers at a very, very high level, and they can describe some of that. And many of you probably saw the 30-minute video, Who is Bobby Kennedy? That was viewed something like 200 million times. And it really told the story of who Bobby Kennedy really is. Not the story that you hear from the New York Times almost every day and from so many other newspapers and websites, that he's a danger, that the system is perfect, that everybody's healthy now, that there's nothing that needs to be changed, and that the only thing that we can do is find a way to get rid of Bobby Kennedy. So, nobody told that story better, I think, in the last year than Jay and Mike. So welcome to our Zoom call, and take it away.
Thanks, Tony. And thank you for your courageous leadership of this group and for pulling us together every week. It's really great. My name's Jay Carson, and
I'm Mike
Piscitelli. my producing and business partner. And just a little bit on us and how we got here. I worked in politics for about 20 years. I've done 4 presidential campaigns. I was Hillary Clinton's press secretary, Bill Clinton's communications director. I worked in the US Senate for a while. And ultimately frustrated by what I saw as a lack of courage and boldness on the part of a party that I used to belong to. I retired, became a screenwriter, and was happily going on about my merry way as a Hollywood screenwriter. I created a show on Apple called The Morning Show, until my dear friend, and the most courageous person I know, Bobby Kennedy, decided to run for president. And I called the most creative person I know, Mike, and said, we need to help Bobby in this race. And with Tony's help, we made the Who is Bobby Kennedy movie. When he became the secretary, we realized that we needed to try to do the same thing for the MAHA movement. Not a half-hour ad this time, but that we needed to put the wins and the push, the policies, the historic work that the MAHA movement is doing into terms that people could understand and that they could hear. Because I knew, I was the system for 20 years. I knew that the system was not going to, the legacy media, everyone was not going to give the MAHA movement a fair shake. You know, when, and the turning point, the moment for me when I called Tony and Bobby was after the red dye move, and they made fun of him on late night TV. And I said, you know, a bunch of the people that I used to work for would have been given Nobel Prizes if they had done that. And Bobby was made fun of on late night TV. And I said, we've got to help tell that story. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell the story of what you're doing, the hard work. We're trying to tell the story of what you're doing in ways that break through to people, because I think that 90% of America would agree with 90% of what MAHA is doing if they could just actually hear the facts. And that's where we come in. We're trying to tell the story in funny, sticky, innovative ways, and go directly to people through online, through organic social media content, and paid online content that reaches people that we've targeted who can hear the story. We're going to show a few of the, but here's the other thing. There is we all know this, but I actually know some of the people. There are rooms full of people like us working for big ag, big food, big pharma, who are trying to do the opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to tell a clear and honest story about what the MAHA movement is doing, and they are trying to drag it through the mud and make it seem crazy and kooky and all of the stuff that they try to do. We're trying to counterbalance that. And so it's not an easy job, but with your help, we can do it. We're going to show just, we've made a couple dozen things right now, ads and short snippets, and we're going to show 4 of them to you right now, but we're sort of making them all over the place. The first one is just MAHA wins, and it'll sort of self-explanatory. So take it away.
RFK Jr. and the Trump administration are putting public health at risk.
President Trump has asked me to end the chronic disease epidemic, and that is what I'm doing.
As U.S. health officials announced plans to phase out 8 artificial dyes.
I submitted a waiver to ban soft drinks and candy from Arkansas's food stamp program.
Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman is pushing to bring whole milk back to school cafeteria. HHS Secretary RFK Jr. launching the first in-depth review of baby formula in this country in 3 decades. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says he plans to tell American medical schools they must offer nutrition courses to students.
So he's going to sign an executive order where the U.S. will pay only the lowest price for a drug.
President Trump wants dramatic change in the next 2 years, and we're going to deliver that for him.
So that's just a straightforward one where we're talking about the wins, because, you know, sometimes people are like, well, what are they actually really doing? We're trying to tell that story in a way that you can really hear it. Sometimes a lot of the issues that we're working on, you guys have seen this before. I try to explain it to someone, you watch their eyes glaze over. Let me tell you about the story of American baby formula and how it has all these blah, blah, blah. We've tried to make an ad. We're going to make a series of these, but we've made an ad that gets right to it. That will get, what we want is for people to help tell the story for us. So they watch this and they forward it around to people. So this next one we call Babies, and we're telling the story of Operation Stork Speed, which, take it away.
Hey there. Come here often?
I'm part of a daycare exchange program.
Cool accent. Paris, Montreal, my dreams.
Here on business.
Can I buy you some formula?
If you must.
Keep the change.
Disgusting! Bartender, what is inside of this? I'd never put that shit in my body.
So, you know, a funny way to tell the story of baby formula and how, you know, the European Union is not co-opted in the same way that the US government is in a bunch of these. Two more quickly, we're also trying to build and show how corrupt big pharma is and how bought off our government is by it. I was behind closed doors for many of these things. And so that's a long process. We've got a hashtag that is PHUK Big Pharma and PHUCK, I'll have to see out there, Big Pharma, that we're putting at the end of a bunch of these ads. But this one is just sort of trying to tell the broad story. And then the last one will be just a narrow story of the Hep B vaccine, which if you've ever tried to tell the story of that to someone, again, their eyes glaze over, but we're trying to put it in, you know, in a video where people will share it.
Big Pharma has done more to harm people in this country than all the cartel leaders in Latin America combined. They've killed tens of thousands of Americans, and they've paid out tens of billions of dollars for bribes.
The single largest acceptor of pharmaceutical dollars.
But almost nobody f***s with them. Why? Because they buy the most powerful people off. And the ones who they can't buy, they destroy.
RFK Jr. spreading some really deranged lies.
They make the stuff Big Tobacco did to Jeffrey Wigand look like patty cake.
We are in the nicotine delivery business.
For 15 years, they ruined the life of a Kennedy. This dude's uncle was president. His dad was the U.S. Attorney General. He was on the cover of Vogue with Al Gore and Julia Roberts, and Big Pharma f***ed him up. The result? Almost no one with any power or anything to lose says anything bad about them. For too long, the most powerful people in America have decided to hang on to what they have rather than tell you the truth about what's really going on.
We are the sickest country in the world.
And then the last one is just telling the story of the Hep B vaccine. And again, there are going to be dozens of these. And when this one finishes, I'll tell you what you can do to help. But we'll just watch this one.
If your baby likes hookers or heroin, you should get them vaccinated against hepatitis B. The Hep B vaccine was designed for prostitutes, intravenous drug users, and the men who like to visit prostitutes. Turned out, once they created the vaccine, none of the people it was created for were willing to admit they were any of those things. So, the vaccine company realized they could make a shitload of money if they pressured the federal government to force a whole new group of people to get it. Babies. Seriously.
So, again, 4 of dozens that we've made. What you can do to help us is, first of all, we've set up our own, social media account so people can have plausible deniability when we need to be edgier and go harder and be funnier than you can be when you have a .gov email address. I had one for many years. You could follow the handle is middle_calling. If you could follow us, if you could share those posts, invite us to collaborate, and then also just email us if you have ideas. If you think we should make something great, a 20-second, 30-second, 60-second ad on an issue that's important to you, just email us at hello@beautifulalarms.com and we'll put that in the chat. So thank you all for listening, and thank you again for Tony for having us here.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jay. And we're very proud to be backing both of you and the great work that you've been doing. And it would be great if all of you can repost the work that Jay and Mike do. So we'll be sending that to you each week as part of the email with all kinds of assets. So I'm very sorry to then read this statement from Donald Trump, which just came out. He posted it on Truth Social. It says, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. So it's a very tough day today, and not much else that I can really say, but we all send our love and prayers to his family, and we'll all continue to fight for the things that he was fighting for and the kinds of things that we all care about. Next, we have Jonathan Emord, excuse me.
What devastating news it is to hear of the loss of Charlie Kirk, a great leader of American freedom, particularly on college campuses, hugely inspiring, and was indispensable to the health freedom movement. It's a terrible, terrible loss. I had the good fortune of speaking at Turning Point USA in the past, and I just know that has been a way to connect those who've been fighting for individual liberty with those students who are struggling on college campuses in an environment of censorship and dislike for anything other than a monologue in favor of statism. So it's really a terrible, terrible loss for America. I've been asked, I think, to speak today because of the legal actions that we've taken. Brief history for you so you know who I am. I'm a constitutional and administrative lawyer, have been for 40 years, and I have the record for defeating the Food and Drug Administration in federal court, which is 14 times, 8 times on constitutional grounds. I'm the general counsel, chief counsel for Lyons for Natural Health. You'll hear from Dr. Verkerk, who is the head of the organization, here shortly. One thing I'll talk about in the short period of time we have together is a recent petition that we filed with the Food and Drug Administration, which we think epitomizes the transparency objectives of the MAHA movement. A lot of people don't realize this, but the Food and Drug Administration has, since the 1930s, been engaged in censorship of truthful nutrient disease health information. You see, there is over 40,000 peer-reviewed scientific journal articles that associate nutrients with disease risk reduction. And yet Big Pharma, in order to protect its monopoly on treatment claims, has been zealous with the aid of the Food and Drug Administration in creating a prior restraint on the communication of truthful nutrient disease information. This has been to the great detriment of the American people when you consider that some 65% of ailments in this country, age-related diseases in particular, are diet-related. So when you are blind in the grocery store and online when you purchase food as to its nutritional effects and its disease risk reduction effects, you may choose foods that are not good for you. You may base decisions principally on taste rather than on nutritive effect. And in any event, you will be kept from knowing that certain things in your diet may extend your lifespan, reduce your risk of disease, and delay the onset of age-related diseases. Now, what we have done recently is file a petition with the Food and Drug Administration asking for the approval of 118 nutrient disease risk reduction claims that the government itself has communicated in the scientific literature over the last several decades. Ironically, the government's own health agencies have communicated in the peer-reviewed literature these nutrient disease risk reduction effects that they, through the Food and Drug Administration, prohibit the American people from receiving in the market. So if you're able to get that information into the market, it will have profound effects on consumer choice. Rather than go to the grocery store and look at an orange and not realize what's in it, you would realize suddenly that it has a host of vitamins and minerals that may have an effect upon reducing the risk of disease and on extending lifespan. That information should be available to you and should be a basis upon which you distinguish among foods. So this petition takes advantage of a provision of the Food and Drug Modernization Act that was inserted to allow for rapid introduction into the market of the government's own nutrient disease information. And the FDA, under the influence of Big Pharma, has prohibited that section from having any intended meaning. So while it was intended to be an exception from FDA's prior restraint on these claims, the FDA interpreted the section against its plain meaning to be the opposite, to actually reinforce the censorship. So we have sued them to get the original construction of the statutory language honored, and we're relying on a recent Supreme Court decision in Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo to bring that home. We're hoping that the FDA under Commissioner McCary and Secretary Kennedy will endorse this and allow the information into the market. It perfectly mirrors their agenda and their commitment to transparency, and it will have a profound effect upon public health. I might mention in just the brief time we have together, a second legal initiative that we have pending in the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. In the last administration, they chose to advance the mission of Big Pharma by making homeopathic drugs, which have an incredible record of safety, unavailable to Americans. And they did that by taking a safe harbor provision that allowed homeopathic drugs into the market without going through the $2.2 billion allopathic drug approval process to go through if they met the requirements of the Homeopathic Pharmacopoeia of the United States. And through this, you have the ubiquitous availability in the United States of homeopathic remedies, and they have been relied upon by millions of Americans, and they have an unparalleled record of safety, far safer even than foods, much, much safer than FDA-approved drugs. Now, the FDA shut this down by saying that the safe harbor would no longer be available, that every homeopathic drug would have to go through the drug approval process. And they said they would impose that on a case-by-case basis. But what they have actually done is through their investigators going to contract manufacturing facilities, have intimidated the people that make homeopathic ingredients out of the market, increasingly making these things unavailable. So we've asked the Kennedy administration to act to end this conflict that we are waging against FDA by changing the policy, re-establishing the safe harbor, revoking the removal of the safe harbor. And we're hopeful that that will come to pass. If not, homeopathic remedies in the United States will disappear. These are just two of the actions that are underway. There are many more. The organization is called the Alliance for Natural Health, and we strongly support Secretary Kennedy. We strongly support Commissioner McCary, and we're at the forefront of pushing for the MAHA agenda through legal change and action. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And let's have your organization up on our website so that people can see it there. And then we can send any kind of assets to all of the people who are on the call that you would like us to.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Robert Verkerk.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony. Following Jonathan, I head up the Alliance for Natural Health. We've been deep in the trenches for over 20 years in Europe, dealing with an incredibly draconian system of regulation. I noticed that Mike referred to the fact that things are not as bad when it comes to additives over there. Let's just remember part of the reason for that is they have a very, very draconian system of risk assessment. So they use the precautionary principle. And so when you look at what Bobby Kennedy is doing with grass, we've just seen the latest indication of rulemaking that's going to be published in October. We produced a very comprehensive white paper on the subject. It's really important that America doesn't go down the same road as Europe, because that is a dead end. there is still corporate capture. Let me tell you, corporate capture works very, very well in Europe. So we have an opportunity in America because of this unique position. COVID created a sense of awareness in people that has inspired the MAHA movement. Without COVID, without people realizing what an authoritarian state can do in terms of taking away people's rights and privileges, there wouldn't be this MAHA movement. Obviously, we now have an administration, and we have Bobby Kennedy in HHS, again, another extraordinary outcome. From a legal point of view, we also have the fact that Chevron doctrine that Jonathan has worked with for so long, a doctrine that was enacted in 1984 that essentially, whenever there was ambiguity over statutes, would allow the agencies to do whatever they wanted to do. It provided them with the tools for overreach. Now that has gone. That is dead as of end of June 2024. So when you put all of those things together, this demands a time for massive regulatory change. This is why we're working day and night. We have 28 different initiatives we're putting in. I've had the opportunity of studying the second MAHA report, and again, what a unique document this is. 121 initiatives. It's never been done before. You have to keep scratching yourself to realize this is coming out of a government. The trick will be making it happen in a way that delivers wins. Calley Means talked about the need for wins. Everyone is looking for wins. The win we need here is to see outcomes that really drag America from the bottom of the health tables. In terms of health adjusted life years, Americans sit number 80. This is something that's very much in the crosshairs of Bobby Kennedy at the moment. But we need to see results. And when you look at all these initiatives, we've got to start working out where are the important priorities, how are we going to change the outcomes. So when you look at, say, ultra processed foods, we've got to understand creating laws that make people more aware of UPFs or reduce the amount that are being used in SNAP programs. How does that compare with the value of home cooking? There's a huge literature that shows us that eating out is one of the most damaging things we do. We have no control. The fats, all these other nutrients that or we call them nutrients, call them additives, that they are disabled nutrients in many cases. So we also have a lot of focus on the things around us, the totality of environmental exposures. In scientific literature, we think of this as the exposome, but we've got to look at the food, the chemicals, the water quality. Great to see fluoride in there, but the quality of the water in America isn't good. That is a significant factor. The quality of the air in cities is appalling. But we also have to look at the social systems. We also have to look at access to nature. So trying to really balance these so that they can be prioritized so that we can get wins is really what it's all about. So we're going to be thrilled to communicate with you over time the extent of the regulatory changes that we're putting in. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity that we've all got to work together on. Tony, Eric, thank you so much for inviting us along.
Thanks so much, Robert. We are getting a little bit short on time, but I want to introduce now Robert Scott Bell, who's one of the very early podcasters, on the right side of history during COVID, 20 years in the trenches, really a natural health warrior. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. I've been broadcasting for 25 years in the media, and as a homeopath for over 30 years, and speaking out about these issues. And I just want to acknowledge that, the violent act that was perpetrated against Charlie Kirk is something that, although in extent and permanency is different, it has occurred to probably everybody on this call here, and that is the act of censorship. And it is a violent act. Censorship is a violent act. And every one of us that has been censored has been a recipient of that. But obviously, the violence doesn't cause you to bleed in the same way Charlie Kirk is. Apparently, we've lost him. But it is so significant that as I was opening the show today, we just learned that this had happened, my show, and I was going to cover the 18 points of the MAHA report. And obviously that got curtailed. And, I was building on what Russell Brand's message is. It was similar in that, how do we react to these scenarios that have occurred throughout history, of course, and we're witnessing a visceral, violent act like this. And the questions I always ask as a homeopath is, what are the connections? What are the causes? How far back, how deep can we go? And, obviously a superficial response is anger and all the, maybe even more violence in that sense in a response to it. And my appeal, of course, is to take a moment to get quiet, contemplative, prayerful, and connect to the source of all guidance. And that comes from God, obviously not government, as where our rights come from as well. And so, we have an opportunity here in terms of our outreach through media is like, how do we steward more, I would say, spiritually mature response to something that is vile and disgusting that happens, again, every day to some degree. The most vicious degree is what we witnessed with Charlie today. And so the messaging that we're coming out with is, I think it supersedes a lot of what we know of the Hegelian dialectic that is used to play one against the other and has been used for, well over a century now. We've talked about it on my show. Jonathan Emord appears regularly. Robert Verkerk. In fact, I know many of you and have interviewed many of you. And if I haven't yet, I'd like to, just in gratitude for your being part of this journey, restoring something that I think is so essential to our spiritual experience here, that freedom to communicate what we're here to do, who we are, even as we may have disagreements within that framework. But we're stronger by our ability to communicate freely and directly. And, on the front of access to information, which leads to wanting to access things that the information leads to, like Jonathan Emord just mentioned, homeopathic medicine in America, how outrageous it is that an agency is clearly captured, sock puppet for industry, has operated, and this initially happened at the latter part of the Trump's first term and then fully initiated during the last president's term, that we are eliminating indirectly but very powerfully the access to a medicine that saved my life and has saved many people's lives in America. Yet it is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the natural products industry. Not as many people know about it or knew about it, that it was a mainstay of medicine in America that had been directly targeted for elimination or assassination in a sense by an industry that controls so much. Yet also the concern I have by this Charlie Kirk event is to ask those questions of what's the connection, to something bigger, something that is happening here. And one of those things was what I covered in the second hour that I pre-recorded today so I could be here with you, is the Senate hearing that Ron Johnson put on with Aaron Siri, directly counteracting all of the claims of safe and effective that has been a mantra within a cult or religion, not a scientific endeavor when it comes to this thing called vaccination. And how that also is an act of violence against the most innocent among us, babies, children. And that has led to what we know of pharma is capable of. Books have been written about it, novels, fiction and nonfiction, about the willingness to discard human life to maintain power and profit. And so I don't know that any of us are naive here, but I think today's events really call on us to be very connected to the guidance from within or above, or however you perceive that the willingness to use violence to achieve or maintain the power and stranglehold on it, to take out of the media cycle, which it had just jumped up to the top, the MAHA agenda, the MAHA report, and this profound revelation of Aaron Siri and a film coming out regarding, what was found out about in this study 5 years ago that wasn't revealed, because what would happen if it were revealed, about the lack of science supporting safety and efficacy, certainly long-term, from the vaccine schedule in America. So this violent act, I have to ask, is it related to how do we change the narrative? How do we change the focal point on what was a massive win and is a continuing massive win to raise real awareness of the lack of scientific validation for this so-called vaccine schedule here in America, and how much the pharmaceutical industry relies upon that initial assault, as I call it, sacrament in the Church of Pharmaceutical Medicine, to elicit a profound reliance and dependence upon further pharmaceutical intervention throughout the life cycle of a child that was born healthy and now is made chronically ill. And I was chronically ill from year zero coming onto this planet as a Gen Xer. I was the canary in the coal mine that led me to my journey to become what I didn't know of, homeopathy, for instance, and do what I do in broadcast media. So again, my message is different because of what happened today, but I wanted to share my concern about how vulnerable we are to being misdirected, redirected because of this violent act, and that we must regain and regain that deep level connection that we might all find with each other here in a common goal, but also our connection to the divine and the purpose and mission of us being here at this moment in time to perhaps change the course of history rather than leading this violent act to more violence, to reverse course and bring that love, not in a naive way, but in a godly way, that we can supersede this event and become better and stronger for it. So thank you, Tony, for inviting me on, and hope this is a helpful message.
Yeah, thanks so much. And you have certainly given so much over so many years, like all the people on this call. You know, you've all really been warriors for things that you really care about, for things that I care about, for things that Bobby Kennedy cares about. And I guess Charlie Kirk made the ultimate sacrifice. You know, we've all made a lot of sacrifices, but he made the ultimate sacrifice. But you know, there's a great quote from a book called The Old Man and the Sea, which I'm sure most of you have read, and it is, "A man can be destroyed but not defeated." And the idea there is that somebody like Charlie Kirk, somebody like all of you, can't really be defeated. You know, that the work that you do lives after you, and you know, and it's part of all that's good in the world. And we all honor Charlie Kirk by doing this work and by continuing to fight. And there's no doctor who I think has fought harder and longer than Dr. Robert Malone, and he is going to take it away from here.
I'm a little taken aback, and thank you, Tony, for those kind words. I considered Charlie a friend and had actually sought counseling from him about my relationship with God and various biblical references to help me to better think about that. We've lost a giant, a young man, a father, a husband, who was truly brilliant and gifted in his ability to communicate, but also truly a warrior. We're blessed with a number of warriors in this movement. Of course, not the least of which is our leader that coined the term, "Make America Healthy Again," Robert F. Kennedy Jr., somebody who was tempered as a child in a crucible that is, to me, still unimaginable, losing both father and uncle to political assassination. The seminal event that caused him to reach out in empathy to Donald Trump and transform American politics after the assassination attempt that was so nearly successful against the president. There is quite a bit of rhetoric, and much of that is projection. I yesterday had to deal with various assertions from a physician and from a city senator that I've been inciting violence against scientists because I posted very simple memes that related to the Second Amendment and to political statements from Elizabeth Warren, and to the logic of random chance with severe events, which is what the metaphor was of the back end of the chamber of a revolver with a single bullet in it. These were weaponized against me, as indications of me inciting violence and in some way playing a role in the gentleman who really became unhinged and fired something like 200 rounds into the CDC, taking the life of a young man who is involved in security for the CDC, but was also a young father and husband. It was asserted in various ways that I had some responsibility for, in our meme roundup, having posted these simple memes. But what was weaponized was the assertion that I was the one inciting violence. And what I've experienced, of course, associated with that weaponized hate that has been amplified by corporate media now, again, this is not my first rodeo with this kind of stuff, as many of you know, was a wave of hate online that I have not seen for many months, with the possible exception of the wave of hate around the time when I was appointed to the ACIP. So maybe not so many months. We're in an environment in which many find it useful for clicks, likes, follows, to amplify messages of hate and violence. One of the ones, that was mentioned yesterday by Senator Blumenthal was, and I'm not going to name names, but was a post involving the language of Nuremberg 2.0 and holding people accountable in a way akin to Nuremberg 1.0. I have counseled against that kind of language, having been in this scrum now for a number of years. And I hope that all of us will not succumb to the temptation of aping the rhetoric and tactics of those that are opposing our movement. Long ago, as I was encountering this logic from one scientist that was prominent at the time, not so much anymore, he was making the case that, well, they're doing it to us, and so we should do it to them. And we have the right to do it to them because they've done it to us. And I assure you that what will happen is if you fall victim to that rhetoric, to that logic, you will become your enemy. The things that you detest, you find so disagreeable in the behaviors of those that are in opposition to our simple effort to try to improve the health of America and particularly American children. I mean, what could be more pure than that? Those that are in opposition to us, as has been discussed at length here, have enormous financial incentives to do so, to do anything they can to delegitimize the movement, to fracture or splinter the movement, to fracture or splinter MAGA from MAHA, to fracture or splinter the Secretary of HHS from the President of the US. And, I take no particular pleasure in having written this book about psychological warfare, which in many ways is an exploration of our journey of my trying to comprehend what I personally have experienced, and my wife has personally experienced. That has included multiple threats of violence. At one point, one of our colleagues that is a strong supporter of MAHA provided full-time security that stayed with me here in my home because of the threats that we were encountering. Those threats are real. Charlie has just demonstrated that that's the case. This is not paranoid. This is not a conspiracy. This is not imagining. Those that are in opposition to our movement are willing to do anything to generate hate, fear, anger, and all of those incredibly powerful emotions, and to weaponize and direct those against us that are seeking what has to be one of the most pure objectives that I can imagine. We're not seeking political power. We're not seeking financial power. We're seeking truth. We're seeking basic human rights like informed consent, the right to make decisions about our lives and those of our children, not to impose our decisions or our philosophies on third parties. This is the core of Bobby's message. I'm not going to take anybody's vaccine away from them. That message is one of truly love and of respect for everyone, that they have the right to make their own decision. We may disagree with their decision. We may think that they are ill-advised. We may think that they are misled. We may even occasionally use terms like sheep to refer to their seeming hypnosis or willingness to accept messaging which we believe is not in their best interest and is manipulated, artificial, non-sincere. But I caution that we avoid the temptation to make their sins our own, the sins of information warfare. And I'm struck, and frankly, I have a little more trepidation now about going out in public. Those of us, including the secretary, that are out there in the public speaking our truth, seeking to improve the condition of all of us, particularly parents, seeking truth and honesty and transparency about those souls that have experienced the trauma of having been injured by pharmaceuticals and then being actively gaslit and denied that. It's so easy to get angry. It's so unfair what's being done. It's so tempting to lash out and to use the rhetoric of war. And it may well be that the rhetoric of war is appropriate in some sense. We are locked into a conflict of epic proportions. We can call it war. When we do that, we fall into the language of armed conflict. So I counsel that we may wish to avoid this language of we are at war with the pharmaceutical industry, we're at war with the libs, we're at war with Antifa, or whatever the framing is. I certainly feel that anger. I certainly feel, mad as hell. I'm mad as hell at what just happened with Charlie. And I hope you are too. I'm mad as hell about the defamation that I experienced yesterday from a handpicked young physician who was clueless about what he was saying and believed that he understood and somehow could read my mind and know what my intent was. I'm mad as hell that Senator Blumenthal decided to create little sound bites by targeting me and misrepresenting my intent. But I'm going to avoid calling for war. I think that I counsel again in this battleground of what is actually information warfare, is psychological warfare. It's fifth generation warfare. It's the use of every possible means of propaganda for both marketing and information control and influence, is what we're up against. Incredibly well funded, explicitly intending to defame and to degrade Secretary Kennedy and his mission, which is our mission. But I plead with you to stay true to our principles, which are integrity, honesty, transparency, forthrightness. It's so easy to engage in trollery and outrage farming and so many other things for clicks, likes, and follows. We're a bunch of influencers. You guys all get that ecosystem. And I'm pleading with you to be the grown-ups here. Yesterday, I gave some testimony towards the end, and frankly, of Senator Johnson's hearing. And after the second round of defamation from this young doctor who is pretty fundamentally clueless, I got a little bit pissed off. And I'm sure out there's video of me going and shaking his hand and then getting visibly angry at him. Fortunately, Aaron Siri came and counseled me. What the press didn't understand was that Ron Johnson had specifically invited me there to, because of a clause in Senate rules, if you're defamed by a senator, you have the right to respond. And so with Ron Johnson's coaching, I claimed that right. And I confronted the senator, but I didn't confront him in anger. I'm grateful for Aaron Siri's counseling to avoid that, but it was also my intention from the start. I attempted to approach Senator Blumenthal with empathy and give him the benefit of the doubt, assume that he knew nothing of who I was, introduce myself to him, and share with him that I had sought a meeting with his aides to go over my CV and explain to him what had gone down. That really helped. Approaching him with empathy and Blumenthal, not somebody that I would reflexively want to approach with empathy, but I did it, and it made for a better transaction, a more effective transaction, and I hope that in doing so, I served as a role model for all of us to do our best to represent the movement professionally and to avoid inflammatory rhetoric and to avoid an eye for an eye, because we could go there so easy right now. And I won't say it wouldn't be justified, but I will say I think it would be counterproductive. So with that, thank you, Tony, for the opportunity to make the closing benediction here. And I hope that in this sober moment, we maintain our momentum, our commitment. We are winning, but our opponents are not going to play nice. And the more we win, the more they're not going to play nice. And just get ready for it. Just gird your loins and be ready for it, and don't let them knock you off your center and cause you to say things like we should have Nuremberg 2.0 and hang them all. That's not going to help us, and it will bite you sooner rather than later. Thanks a lot, and God bless to all of us.
Thanks so much, Robert. So we are just about done. We're going to have about 2 more minutes just of final things that I want to say and some actions that I'd like people to take. So, Robert's statement, that was really great. And so many of you said things that I thought were really impressive and meaningful and honest. Clearly, if we slow down, if we allow our sadness and our fear to overcome us, and, then I think we all lose. And what we should really do is carry Charlie Kirk with us. And then he becomes a part of everything that we do going forward. He becomes part of our strength. He becomes part of our battles, our victories, our journey. And we can get a lot of strength from it, and better to take that strength and channel it and honor all the great things that Charlie Kirk has done. So I'm going to end now just by, telling Charlie Kirk to rest in peace, but then to give you a few actions that we'd like you to take going forward. And then, hopefully we all move forward with Charlie Kirk's strength and with 1/10 the energy that he put into the work that he did for so many years. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is to flood the ACIP with all kinds of comments. The vaccine committee, in the next days and weeks needs your voice. So go to the Federal Register, demand that they study vaccinated versus unvaccinated children, even if it's something that you haven't focused on. Once again, these are toxins being put into children. It doesn't matter if it's through food or pharmaceuticals or pesticides. This is a chance to push back and to lower the toxic load. And we should be doing that, as I've said, in any way we can. And then, call your senators and let them know that we feel that Bobby Kennedy is fighting for us, and that we feel that we're fighting against Big Pharma, and that if they attack Bobby Kennedy, they're just doing the work of Big Pharma, that they should be getting paid by Big Pharma. And if they really want to do their jobs as public servants, they should recognize the incredible things that the MAHA movement stands for. And that, these are things that everybody should want. Everybody should want healthier children. Bobby Kennedy says time after time, there are no Republican or Democratic children. They're just children, and we need our children to be healthier. And then the other thing is that we need to stop the pesticide protection racket that's really getting going, whether it's at the state level or at the federal level. Sections 453 and 507 of the appropriations 2026 budget. Call your House representative, really make yourself known that we can't let them do with pesticides what they've done with vaccines, what they've done with so many other products, sneaking chemicals into our foods, telling us that it's not dangerous, telling us that it's necessary, telling us that there are going to be greater harms if we don't do these things. Those are lies. Those are things that are just done to make more money at the expense of public health. And we have to stop that. We have to stop it now. So we're going to be sharing many of these things and all kinds of assets, things from Jay and Mike and things from so many of you in our email that'll go out tomorrow at 9 a.m. And then the one last thing is that I hope that you'll all join and ask your followers to join the MAHA report on Substack. We're publishing things daily, trying to stay right up to date. And we really want to interact with you there and have you know day by day what we're up to, what we think matters, and what we think you can do. So thanks so much to all of you. And once again, this is every Wednesday at 4 p.m. And we hope you'll all keep joining, tell all of your friends, and let's really bring power to the MAHA movement.
We will not comply with the institution's sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. We will not comply with the institution's sick illusion. No, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution.
The only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.